Have you ever caught him staring at you when he thought you weren't looking? Or noticed how he seems to unconsciously mirror your movements, adopting your phrases and gestures as if they were his own? These aren't just sweet quirks of new love. They're unconscious breadcrumbs of something deeper, emotional addiction. Beneath conscious declarations of affection lies a complex psychological landscape that Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, spent his career mapping. In the hidden terrain of the unconscious mind, emotional addiction forms roots that run far deeper than casual interest or conventional love. Unlike the polished performances of romantic pursuit, planned dates, and carefully crafted text messages, unconscious behaviors reveal what a man may not even recognize in himself. These involuntary signs emerge from psychological mechanisms formed in childhood, manifesting as patterns he neither controls nor fully understands. What makes these unconscious behaviors powerful is their authenticity. They can't be manufactured or controlled. When a man shows signs of fixation, employs defense mechanisms, creates symbolic gestures, merges his identity with yours, displays separation anxiety, or develops physical responses to your absence, he reveals Freudian fingerprints of emotional addiction. Recognizing these 6 signs gives you insight into relationship dynamics typically hidden in the shadows, offering clarity about the unconscious forces driving your connection. A story his words may never tell, but his behavior cannot help but show. To grasp how emotional addiction manifests in relationships, we must first understand Freud's revolutionary view of the mind. For Freud, conscious thought represents merely the tip of a vast psychological iceberg. Below the surface lies the unconscious, a reservoir of repressed desires, memories, and primitive instincts that drive our behavior without our awareness. This unconscious mind operates through what Freud called the id, our primal desires, the superego, our internalized moral standards, and the ego, the realistic mediator between the two. In romantic relationships, these psychological structures create the foundation for attachment patterns that often mirror our earliest experiences with caregivers. Freud believed we unconsciously transfer or project feelings from childhood relationships onto our adult partners. A man emotionally addicted to you isn't just responding to who you are. He's reacting to internal representations shaped by his past. This explains why his attachment might seem disproportionate or puzzling. You've unknowingly triggered powerful unconscious associations. When emotional addiction takes hold, these mechanisms intensify. The boundary between healthy attachment and psychological dependency blurs as unconscious forces override rational thought. Freud would see this not as a conscious choice, but as an involuntary response driven by deep-seated psychological needs. What looks like love on the surface may actually be a complex intersection of unresolved childhood needs, defense mechanisms, and unconscious drives. The signs that follow reveal when a man's attachment has crossed into emotional addiction, a state where you've become essential to his psychological equilibrium. The first unconscious sign emerges through what Freud called fixation, when psychological development becomes arrested at a particular stage. In relationships, fixation manifests as an obsessive quality to his attention. Repetition compulsion, another Freudian concept, drives us to unconsciously recreate familiar patterns, even painful ones from childhood. For a man emotionally addicted to you, this creates behavioral loops he can't easily break. He compulsively seeks contact, creating seemingly arbitrary routines around your interactions. Look for these revealing behaviors. He messages immediately after waking, making you his first thought of the day. His schedule mysteriously reorganizes around opportunities to see you. Conversation with you takes priority over pressing obligations, and he remembers minute details about your preferences that even you might have forgotten. More telling is his reaction to disruptions in these patterns. If missing a regular call or text exchange triggers disproportionate anxiety, you're witnessing fixation at work. This isn't calculated behavior. It's his unconscious mind compelling him to maintain psychological equilibrium through connection with you. This fixation isn't just about wanting you. It's about needing the psychological stability your presence provides. His unconscious has formed a dependency where you've become essential not just to his happiness, but to his fundamental sense of security. Freud identified defense mechanisms as unconscious psychological strategies that protect us from anxiety and emotional threats. In emotional addiction, these mechanisms reveal themselves through distinctive patterns. Regression is particularly significant, a defense where adults revert to childlike states under stress. Watch for moments when he becomes uncharacteristically vulnerable, adopting almost childlike behaviors when seeking your reassurance. This isn't manipulation. It's his unconscious temporarily reverting to earlier developmental stages, where attachment figures provided absolute security. Jealousy offers another window into his defense mechanisms. Freud saw pathological jealousy not simply as possessiveness, but as projection, attributing to others desires one cannot accept in oneself. His unconscious fear of losing you manifests as suspicion about others' intentions, protecting him from confronting his own dependency. Notice how he rationalizes behaviors that prioritize your relationship over other commitments. This isn't reasoned decision-making, but rationalization. A defense mechanism justifying choices his unconscious has already made. Listen for elaborate explanations for cancelled plans with friends or neglected responsibilities that inevitably position your relationship as the reasonable priority. Most revealing is denial about the relationship's intensity. If others comment on his attachment to you and he dismisses their observations despite contradictory evidence, his unconscious is protecting him from recognizing his own dependency, a vulnerability his ego cannot yet integrate. Freud believed that unconscious feelings too powerful to express directly get displaced onto substitute objects or actions. For the emotionally addicted man, this creates a pattern of symbolic gestures that carry unconscious significance. Displacement manifests through seemingly random objects that become disproportionately meaningful. That coffee mug you casually mentioned liking becomes a prized possession. Your offhand compliment about his blue shirt transforms his wardrobe. These aren't calculated attempts to impress you. They're unconscious displacements of emotional significance. Gift-giving takes on ritualistic qualities. The presents themselves matter less than what they symbolize. Physical manifestations of emotional connection that persist in your absence. These aren't just gifts, but unconscious talismans against separation anxiety. Particularly revealing are the unusual rituals he creates around your relationship. Specific restaurants that become sacred ground, precise greeting patterns when you reunite, or private language that develops between you. Freud would recognize these as symbolic enactments of unconscious emotional bonds. Most telling is his treatment of objects you've touched or given him. If he preserves trivial items, a movie ticket stub from your date, or the empty coffee cup from your first meeting, you're witnessing displacement in action. These objects unconsciously stand in for you, allowing him to maintain psychological connection even when physically separated. Freud's theories on ego boundaries help explain another sign of emotional addiction: the unconscious merger of identities. The ego normally maintains psychological separation between self and others, but in emotional addiction, these boundaries begin dissolving. Watch for his gradual adoption of your perspectives, interests, and even linguistic patterns. This isn't conscious mimicry, but an unconscious merger where your preferences become indistinguishable from his own. His musical tastes shift to align with yours. Political views you express reappear in his conversations with others. Foods he previously disliked become favorites after discovering you enjoy them. Language offers a particularly clear window into this process. Listen for the increasing dominance of we over I in his speech, not just regarding shared activities, but in expressing opinions, making decisions, and describing feelings. This linguistic shift reveals an unconscious reconfiguration of identity where separation from you becomes increasingly unimaginable. Decision-making provides another indicator. If he demonstrates increasing difficulty making choices without your input, even for matters unrelated to you, his unconscious has begun integrating your perspective as essential to his functionality. This isn't healthy interdependence, but a merger where autonomous functioning becomes compromised. Most significant is how he narrates his life story. If your arrival becomes the dividing line between before and after, with pre-relationship experiences reinterpreted through the lens of your connection, his unconscious has reconstructed his identity with you at its center. While Freud's contemporaries later expanded his theories into object relations, the foundation for understanding separation responses begins with his work. Emotional addiction produces distinctive reactions to separation. that reveal unconscious attachment patterns. Object constancy, the ability to maintain a stable internal image of someone when they're absent, develops in childhood. In emotional addiction, this capacity becomes compromised. Watch for behaviors that suggest he struggles to tolerate even brief separations without reassurance of your continued existence. This manifests through communication patterns during absences. The frequency isn't what matters, it's the quality. Messages that serve no practical purpose except confirming your continued attention. Calls that lack specific content but seem aimed at emotional regulation. Unexplained anxiety when you're unreachable. These reveal compromised object constancy. Physical separations trigger particularly telling responses. Business trips or vacations apart become disproportionately significant events, met with subtle resistance or elaborate planning for contact. This isn't conscious clinginess, but an unconscious response to perceived threat to psychological stability. Most revealing is his behavior upon reunion. Excessive relief that seems disconnected from the separation's duration, intense physical reconnection, or detailed accounting of his activities while apart aren't simply enthusiasm. They're unconscious, reassurance-seeking behaviors meant to re-establish psychological equilibrium disrupted by your absence. Perhaps the most fascinating unconscious sign of emotional addiction appears through the body itself. Freud pioneered understanding the connection between psychological states and physical symptoms, and in emotional addiction, this mind-body connection becomes particularly evident. His physical state begins unconsciously synchronizing with your relationship. Energy levels, sleep patterns, appetite, and even immune function may fluctuate in response to relationship events. This isn't manipulation or conscious somatization, but genuine psychophysiological responses to attachment disruptions. Watch for his body's response to your presence. Pupil dilation, subtle shifts in breathing patterns, and changes in vocal tone occur involuntarily when you appear. More telling are physical symptoms during relationship stress, headaches, digestive issues, or sleep disturbances that appear during conflicts or separations and mysteriously resolve upon reconnection. Particularly significant is mirroring, his body unconsciously matching your physical states. He yawns when you yawn, adopts your posture, matches your speaking pace, or even develops synchronous physical complaints. These aren't conscious imitations, but evidence of neurobiological attunement that Freud would recognize as profound attachment. Most compelling are autonomic responses he cannot fake. Blushing when you offer praise, palm sweating during relationship discussions, or pupillary responses to your touch. These physiological reactions bypass conscious control, providing unfiltered evidence of how deeply his emotional addiction has integrated into his physical functioning. These 6 unconscious signs, fixation, defense mechanisms, symbolic gestures, identity merger, separation anxiety, and psychosomatic responses, reveal when attachment has evolved into emotional addiction. But what distinguishes healthy connection from psychological dependency? Healthy attachment enhances functioning, while emotional addiction compromises it. Secure bonds expand capacity for autonomy. Addiction diminishes independent functioning. Healthy attachment acknowledges separateness. Addiction seeks merger. Mature love tolerates ambivalence. Addiction demands idealization. From Freud's perspective, emotional addiction represents unresolved developmental needs projected onto the present relationship. The emotionally addicted partner unconsciously uses you to regulate psychological states that should ideally be managed internally. This creates a relationship dynamic where you've become essential, not just emotionally, but functionally. Understanding these dynamics isn't about manipulation, but insight. Recognizing unconscious patterns allows you to make informed choices about the relationship's sustainability. Ask yourself, does this connection promote mutual growth or mutual dependency? Does it acknowledge reality or require idealization? Does it enhance or replace individual development? The unconscious mind speaks its own language, one of behaviors, patterns, and physiological responses rather than words. By learning to decode these signals, you gain access to the unspoken emotional currents shaping your relationship. What emerges is a deeper understanding of attachment that words alone could never capture. The true story of his emotional world, revealed through the unwitting testimony of his unconscious mind.